Welcome to Being Someone, the podcast where our hopes are to provide biblically based perspectives on life to shape the biblical worldview and self-image as a child of God. And our goal is to bring people in to have honest conversations to provide the opportunity for heart transformation. So without further ado, let's all dive in to this week's episode of Being Someone.
Yo, what's up, podcast world? It's your boy IB in the dorm studio with BM, WL, and the one and only ZT. What is up, boys?
Wow. What's up, guys?
Welcome to the podcast studio. For those that don't know all of our initials, that is Blake Murphy. Hello, Blake.
Hello, this is Blake Murphy, yes.
Walker Lipscomb, not Murphy.
Hello.
Yeah. And Xander Turner.
Thank you. Spelled with a Z, not an X, for those who are wondering.
That is important.
It does happen. I've seen it multiple times. In fact, I'm pretty sure 50% of the students have it as an X in their phone right now.
I believe that. We were at Dolly Parton Stampede, applying for jobs, and they asked us for our names, and I told them, "Hey, my name's Isaiah Barton, not Parton. Otherwise,
that would have got the job on the spot." Right?
That's exactly what they said.
It'd
have been really cool. But yeah, no, I'm just a little insecure about my name. No big deal.
What is your name? For those that didn't get it, because you just said the initials.
Thank you. Yeah. My name is Isaiah Barton. I don't really like telling people that, just because I'm so insecure about it.
Wow, what a segue.
Thank you. Which brings me to our topic of discussion tonight. I guess it is 10 o'clock, 10:07 here in the podcast dorm. So, tonight? 10:08. I thought you said tonight. So, we have a few questions about insecurities and what that looks like as being almost college students into the real world, and how that can play out into our lives, and what we know about it and what we can glean from people around us, including Xander Turner. So thanks for being on the podcast, man.
Hey, I am glad to be here. One, the setting is really fun. Two, I enjoy getting to tackle all of these topics. I have the privilege of being able to look over at a board right now and see all of the ones that y'all are going to go over in the future. And I'm just highly impressed and honored to be here. So I'm excited to get into it.
Yeah, our pilot.
Glad to have you.
It's great to have you.
Wow. Thanks, guys. I feel honored.
The first.
So does the paycheck come in after I do this, or when do I get paid? Is it bi-weekly?
Oh.
So actually, you get to take us out to Sonic.
Yes.
Okay.
This is an opportunity for you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
First guest. Yeah.
Okay, first off, defining insecurities. What is an insecurity? Anybody?
I think insecurities are things that we find in ourselves that we don't like about ourselves. That, like, ultimately the devil can kind of just get a grasp on and just use it against us and, like, just twist our mind. But I mean, if anybody else has
Anything to add
thoughts
to that?
on that, yeah.
We looking for the personal definition, or like a more relatable definition?
Yeah, whatever you want.
Yeah, it's just like a quote unquote flaw you find about yourself. It's not really a flaw, because we're all made in the image of God, and we don't really have flaws physically. But yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I like those definitions. I am going to say it's a self-proclaimed expectation that doesn't match what you think it should match. I'm going to purposely put self-proclaimed, self-assessed, what you think about a standard, and then you're not meeting the bar of what you have set in your mind. That's what I think an insecurity is.
So if they're self-proclaimed, would you say they come from ourself, or where do they come from?
Yeah, I think half and half. I think we're going to get into it a little bit more of where a lot of these certain insecurities come from. one, we can always, like, yes, there's an enemy at work. He is totally planting seeds, and that's definitely part of the problem. But we also have to look internally, too. Like, we are also the problem. We are sinners. You look at just the root of sin and Adam and Eve. Like, yes, the enemy played a part in that, but we also have a huge part in that. And so I think it can go both ways. It can stem from yourself. It can stem from the enemy. It takes two to tango in this scenario, in my mind. So,
yeah. So would you say that insecurities are necessarily sinful?
it's a great question.
I do think it's a sin. I think when you're talking about an insecurity, it's the term, like the phrase that kept bouncing around in our little pre-meeting was that insecurity is literally a lack of trust in God. It's you don't have the confidence in His Word. Yeah, it's a lack of trust. And
yeah, lack of trust in provision of, like, we know that God is going to provide for us. Like, scripturally, Jeremiah 17:7-8 says, "Blessed is the man who trusts in the Lord, whose trust is in the Lord. He is like a tree planted by water that sends out its roots by the stream, and does not fear when heat comes, for its leaves remain green, and it is not anxious in the year of drought, for it does not cease to bear fruit."
I agree.
yeah.
99% of the time, I'm going to say it's a sin. But I'm going to have a little bit of pushback, okay? And this is honestly not a biblical pushback. This is a Xander pushback. So I want to put that out there. This is Xander preference, and this is Xander practical life. I think that there are some insecurities that may not be sinful. I'm almost thinking that weight category that I know Dones talked to y'all about at one point, of the difference between weight and sin. I think sometimes, now, this is in the 0.01 category of the 99 that I'm talking about. But I do think there's some, like, good insecurity in the fact of, like, man, maybe not physical insecurity, but, like, social awareness insecurity, right? Like, sometimes there's, like, man, I feel like I'm not connecting as well with others. That can become an insecurity. It can be fixed, but sometimes there's, like, a self-assessment that needs to happen, and insecurity of, like, I wonder why that's the case. Maybe I'm the one talking too much, and so maybe I'm the one I ask a question and then I don't wait for a response. I respond for it already. That's a small insecurity that I'm talking about, but I do think there's a small caveat of maybe not all insecurity is bad, but at the same time, that is a very minor category I'm going to put that in, and that is not biblical. Don't fact check me in the Bible because I'm probably wrong.
Quoted ZT.
Yes. Quoted ZT.
Is that, would you say it's still an insecurity at that point, what you're saying, or is it more of a conviction?
I think you can self-assess that category. Yes, conviction for sure, but I think there is a phase of insecurity in that process.
Okay.
Maybe it's the realization part of, oh my gosh, everyone over here is making friends and I'm not, and the conviction part comes later. But I think there's a small piece, there's a little sliver of the pie that I do think I would label as insecurity in that moment.
Yeah, or even, like, self-consciousness.
Yes, that's a great way of saying it.
Right, yeah.
And I think that, like, insecurity is an over amount of self-consciousness, because you're now putting all these things back on yourself. And so I think it's a great word for it. That's a good little tie-in. Synonym, as some would say.
A synonym.
The synonym.
It's a slippery synonym.
Where could you find a synonym, Isaiah?
With the dinosaurs.
What?
the long neck.
Thesaurus.
Oh. That went over my head.
You're just no. He's calling himself out. We were talking about thesauruses, and what'd you say?
Wilson said something about a thesaurus. He just mentioned the term, and I said, "Is that the one with the long neck?"
That's funny. I'll say it.
It's just, you can see his blank
so
expression, like thinking about what I said, and then turn into a chuckle.
Oh man.
You okay?
That's pretty sad. I feel like a lot of body image, or a lot of insecurities come from like the realm of body image.
Yeah, let's talk about it.
Let's talk about it. I was just listening to a podcast, and there was a stat. I'm going to shout him out. Becoming something.
Small creator on the platform.
Small creator on the platform. Maybe a few more subscribers than we have.
It's close. It's close enough.
Maybe you've heard of them.
Maybe you've heard of them. Yeah. They were saying, this is all online, and they were saying that 91% of women, as of like 2017 when this was recorded, that they experienced some sort of unhappiness with their body.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, I could believe it. And yes, with girls, it's so prevalent, and we could get into that discussion real fast, I'm sure. But it's also a thing with guys, and I think that's growing. I think I've seen that in the ministry world already, which I think to some it might be shocking. But I think when we talk about insecurities, especially body image, we tend to cater that to the girls, and rightfully so. Like, I get it. But I think it also needs to be talked about healthily with fellows as well. And that can turn into way more physical issues of eating disorders or all these other type of things. And so, yeah, I'm glad that this is something that we're talking about for sure.
Yeah. So what is our hope in having insecurities about our bodies, and go into like the image of being made into the image of God? Like,
I think that one thing that I think everybody should understand is that we are made in the image of God. So like, nobody is perfect, but in God's eyes, we are made perfect. Like, nobody lives a sinless life, but the way God made us, we are fearfully and wonderfully made. And it's like, yes, we may have our own insecurities, and we may have physical attributes that we don't appreciate about ourselves, but ultimately God made us in the way that He wanted us to be made. So if you struggle with maybe your weight or any insecurity about how you look, God could be putting that in your life to use you, or kind of like use that as a growing point or like a stepping stone in your story or in your life.
And what God means, or God can take what the enemy has meant for evil and turn it for good. Yeah. So if you're insecure about something, that is something that God can use in a much greater way than what you think about it.
100%.
Is that? Do you think that plays into His sovereignty? That He allows these things to happen to give us a chance to grow from it?
Oh, 100%. I think He's in the business of doing that. I like the little half quote that we had of Genesis 50:20, and so what Isaiah just said is so true. You can even look right what James 1:2, trials. You can see that as a trial of disliking something about yourself. And I mean, look, we're gonna get to how we can problem solve this area, and I've heard God's heartbeat for this. We're not trying to fix you in one 30-minute podcast, but we're trying to give you truth, get to replace lies. But man, if we can learn to be content, like that, I think insecurity comes from the lack of contentment. We're going to talk about comparison and what that looks like and how that's typically the root of insecurities. But man, if we can replace that with contentment and what the Lord is doing in your life, what you look like, your presentation of yourself, and be content in that, oh my gosh, it changes the game, physically, mentally, spiritually. And so, yeah, I think you're 100% right. It does. The Lord has a reason for it. Can we see it always? I don't think so.
No. That would defeat the purpose a little bit, wouldn't it?
I think it might.
Then He wouldn't be God if we knew everything.
Because I also think, like, if I can chime in here, I think that if you, like, especially nowadays, a lot of people want to live in like a worldly view, like they kind of want to look like cool or attractive in the world's eyes versus in God's eyes. And I think that if you live in that kind of thought process or live in that kind of mindset, that can really bring you down and like build more insecurities. And it's just kind of like, if you're not living for God, then I mean you are living for the world, which is not what we're here to do. We're here to live for God and follow Him and really understand Him and build a relationship with Him.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. It's so easy to understand how like we or other people can like go down that path of like, hey, this is like what the world is telling me. This is like what the movies are, and like they're so unrealistic. Like you look on Instagram and like for the women out there, like there's girls like editing pictures, and like what you're comparing yourself to is ultimately not real, and it's so fake. And I think like we're trying to replicate that, and we're comparing ourselves to that, which is something that I can talk about. Like that is where a lot of body image issues and insecurities come from, is that comparison.
100%. Man, you kind of mentioned there with social media. I know this is so new age hipster of us to talk about, but man, it's such a new thing. Like in the reality of history, like that started so recently. We don't know the effects of that, and we're starting to a little bit. But man, we are, even just 5 minutes on the gram, your brain is chemically going through so many different things, retaining all this information. Our brains are not supposed to know that much stuff in a day. Like I'm thinking like a pioneer, right? You know, hey, what we're going to eat today? Is Lucy dying of the plague? I don't know. Like that's what they do. That's the information they know. And we are getting every football score, every Ebola virus that's coming out. This guy's dating, this guy's not, like all these things, and we're seeing the most ideal bodies.
Yep.
You look at how are we supposed to compete with Ryan Gosling? I don't know. I'm pretty sure that dude's a robot. I have no idea.
Especially if he edits his photos.
Yeah, and I'm telling you though, like there's just small things that every time you look at, this is a chemical word, but like your dopamine of when you're scrolling through and Instagram, it's like, gosh, like we are, I don't even realize it, comparing ourselves, and you look after, I promise you do not feel rejuvenated after looking at Instagram. You just don't. It's not a restful time. Even if your body is physically resting, your mental state is not, and you're playing a comparison game without you even realizing it. And so I think social media, it's already hard enough to not compare in the world we live in, and social media is adding that times 1,000 in my mind.
Yeah, because you also got to think, social media, people are going to post at their best.
100%.
Like, they're not going to, like, if you take Be Real into consideration, even when it's just like once or twice a day they post, they're going to try and make it look their best. Because if you can make it look like you're having the best time of your life, and like you can edit your photos to make them look like you look up to the world standards.
Yeah.
Kind of like you cloud everybody else's mind to make you think, or make them think that you're like at your A game.
100%.
Like what is, it's kind of clouding everybody's judgment, because they could go home and just be having the worst time. They could have their own insecurities, and people don't know because they only see them at their best.
You even see that. You ever know what a Finsta is? You ever heard of that?
A fake Insta.
That's right. Wow, look at me, just hanging out with all the cool kids in here. No,
You're only
but
3
even
years older than
Finstas,
me.
like they're still going for a persona that's probably not them. Like they try to make it seem real, but at the end of the day, you look at their feed and it's like you're trying to match something that's not you anyway. Even like on their Finstas, you know, like it's ingrained in the social media culture, and so it's dangerous. Oh my gosh. Dangerous.
People are searching for instant gratification.
Yeah.
It's like they want that. They want to be gratified. They want the attention. It feels good, and like you're talking about how like it's literally a biological reaction.
Mm-hmm.
Like you literally a chemical is released in your body. It's it makes you feel good. And it might feel good, like, in the moment, but like you said, like, once you close the app, you're like, what was it all for?
I mean, seriously. Just give, like, in your downtime, read a book, read a chapter, and then see how you feel after, and then do the same amount of time on social media. I promise you. You're doing the same thing. You're sitting there with your eyes moving a few centimeters. Same thing, same physical thing, but you will be way more mentally exhausted with the scrolling. Now it is.
Yeah. Comparing that highlight reel to our real life.
So good.
Yeah. I think we've covered what insecurities are. I want to delve into what are some practical steps that we can implement in our lives in order to overcome insecurities.
That's good.
Well, I think, so I was texting my mentor before, from back home before this, and I asked him if there was anything he wanted to, any nuggets of wisdom he wanted to drop, and he ended up saying something that is really resonating with me, and I keep looking at it on my laptop right now, and he said that the more we understand our identity through Jesus, the more we see the end of insecurity, because our image of ourselves is never going to satisfy us because it's worldly. The only way that the image of ourselves is ever going to satisfy us is if it's influenced by God, if it's if you're inhabited by the Holy Spirit, if everything you do is like through a perspective of like the Word, honestly.
And how God sees you.
That's good. I think a good perspective for us to have is to realize that everyone has insecurities, right? I mean, there's probably not a person on this earth that isn't walking through something that they're not insecure about. Did I say that right? I don't know, but you get my point.
Yeah.
And it's like we really honed in on the body image one because I think that's the most prevalent one.
Right.
But man, especially the older you get, you start getting the financial stuff, right? Relational stuff. Oh, that's a big one this age. This guy has a girlfriend. I don't.
Leaders and anxiety about the future.
100% the future. Am I going to be secure? And like that's something to be insecure about for sure. Job titles. Like everyone has some type of insecurity. I think it's a good thing for us to recognize that you're not alone in this.
I think emotional insecurities are a big thing too, like anxiety, overthinking, just like anything that falls on that kind of like spectrum of emotional insecurities, like that's a big thing nowadays, especially. But
right on. I think a practical step towards this is opening up about it with somebody, especially like if you have friends that you're hanging out with, and maybe you're walking through something like weight, or whether it's it could be even like sin in your life. Like this is something that's hard for me. Like I don't necessarily. Okay, this is an example. Like maybe you're telling your friends, hey, I am really struggling when we're all having a sleepover and whatnot, and you guys are wanting to eat an entire cake each, and that's just not something that I can do, and I want you to walk alongside me with that. I think that's just something that we can walk with each other through, and just bringing people into it, and not doing it alone.
That's really good.
And I also think Galatians 1:10, this is the advice that I've been given, is to write this, memorize it, write it on your heart, just keep it in your heart. And it goes, Galatians 1:10, For am I now trying to persuade people or God, or am I striving to please people? If I were still trying to please people, would I not be a servant of Christ? I would not be a servant of Christ. I butchered that. Oh well.
Hey, that's a bar, though. It really is. And I think what's interesting about insecurities is, like, that's the root in my mind. Like, to catch something at this point is a big deal. And so I love what you're saying, like, being able to confess that or talk to somebody about it, catch it early. Because what we don't want happening with insecurities is it moving into action, right? And so this is the root. And let's go back to the body image stuff. We don't want the physical sin of not eating or all these things trying to fix it. Like the insecurity part is the root, and the fact we were talking about is a big deal. But yeah, I love the fact of what we can do to fix it first is catch it early, and catching insecurities early and vocalizing it to somebody is a big, big, big deal.
Yeah. I think because also if you vocalize it, you tell someone about it and they're struggling through the same thing. Like say with weight and like with an eating disorder, if you talk to somebody else that may struggle with the same insecurity, you could hold each other accountable and kind of like help each other through that.
Yeah, it's cool. It's cool to know each other's trigger points. Like, hey, this group just did this. Like, how they make you feel, right? And so it's a big deal to walk in it, lock arms together, and do it as one.
Yeah.
And with accountability partners, as we're talking about, Adam Martin was saying that you're only going to get as much as you give.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't go and expect your accountability partner to like help you with something if they don't specifically know what you're working through.
It's good.
Yeah, and then encouraging those people to take steps like delete Instagram that's another step. Delete Snapchat.
Step.
Yeah, delete anything that's going to lead you to that comparison that can ultimately lead to insecurities. Maybe keep Be Real because I'm a big Be Real fan.
Be Real's great.
Unless that's going to be hard for you.
Yeah, if we're talking practical too, and I know this is a little outlandish, but there's a saying that one of, I think it was Chuck Swindoll, he said, thoughts entangle themselves through the fingertips and out the lips. And so we've talked about out the lips, but write down like what is triggering you. Like when you feel super insecure and the anxiety is building up, what was the thought process that got you there? What happened in that moment? Because then you get to start realizing, okay, here's a pattern here. Like I'm starting to see when this comes up, this happens, and kind of like the taking your thoughts captive. You get to learn, okay, when this is being talked about or when this scenario comes up, I know that my natural reaction is going to be this. Let me take that thought captive, remove it, put something else in that place. I think it's a very practical thing to do if we're talking about hands-on, what can we do in the moment. Yeah.
That's good.
Well, thank you all for joining us today. It sounds like it's a funeral.
They come together today.
I'm just going to leave you with this. Seek the approval of God, be real, and write down insecurities and find a group to be accountable with.
What's your Be Real at?
My Be Real?
Yeah, what's your like account name?
Add me at Isaiah Barton 230. I don't know if that's actually true. But you know who else you can follow on Instagram? You can follow Xander Turner on Instagram. I was trying to find something.
My plug.
I was trying to find your something to introduce you by, and I found like this Instagram account from when you were like
that's funny
8 years
old.
old.
I'm sure it was bad.
And
Yeah.
it was.
Oh my gosh.
I think
Talk
your
about
sister.
Insecurities. No, I'm kidding.
I think your sister actually made the account
That's
for
right.
you.
My Venmo is Xander-Turner-1. Thank you.
We're not gonna do this. Oh, that's hilarious. All right. Well, seek the approval of God, not the approval of man. Know whose you are and that you are a child of God. And